Tony Blazer for the Motocross Vault presented by Blinzall. If you're in the market for some high-quality racing oil for your two-stroke or four, make sure you go to blinzall.com and use our discount code VAULT20 to save 20% at checkout. Thank you for all the support.
Hey, I'm Steve Mathis. Welcome to Tony Blazer's Motocross Vault.
Hello and welcome back to the Motocross Vault. My name is Tony Blazer, and what this video is going to cover is a look back at Suzuki's 1978½ RM250C-2. Now, when you think of kind of half-year models, it's kind of an outlier. There aren't many ones that come to mind. Really, KTM has been the pioneer in the last, 7-8 years with their factory edition models, where they'll come out with a mid-year update. And typically what that does is they kind of add some of the features that are going to come out in the next year's model a little early. And it seemed like, obviously, that was kind of a pioneering move by KTM. But Suzuki actually did basically the same thing in 1978. In 1978, there's actually two RM250s. There's the RM250C, which is very similar to the 77 model, has the aluminum tank, kind of the basic same styling they'd used since 76. And then in 78½, they came out with a mid-year model that added the plastic tank and changed the styling of the bike, added some longer travel, a lot of stuff. It was kind of like a preview of what you would see the next year, and it was interesting. They only did it this 1 year. I'm not sure why. Obviously it was a long time ago. I was 7 or 8 when this bike came out, so I wasn't really cognizant of it at the time, but it seems to me that maybe Suzuki was feeling pressure with the all-new machines from the competition that year. 78 was a big year for motocross. You have the first year for the CR250R Elsinore, the Red Rocket, my first real motocross bike. Really cool machine, added super long travel suspension, all new motor, just a really, really amazing and pioneering motorcycle, still popular today. Kawasaki, after a year off, came back in 78 with their KX250A4, a much improved machine, the best machine certainly they had up to that point. And then Yamaha, they added a lot of revisions to the YZ250 in 78. It's not a completely new machine, but it's a major revision as well. And I think maybe Suzuki was feeling a little bit of pressure from the competition after really being probably the best bike to have the previous couple of years. So they came out with this mid-year update in 78 and added much more power, longer travel suspension, new bodywork. I actually kind of prefer the styling of the old one. I never really care for these plastic tank models as far as the styling goes, but I think for most people who are certainly the pros and the faster guys, the 78½ was a superior model to the original just 78C model. If you'd like to support what I do, I have Motocross Vault merch available on my Teespring store. I have all kinds of designs for motorcycles, ATVs, even some classic designs designed to kind of show the evolution of machines like the Hondas and Yamahas and Suzukis over time. I'll put a card in the video here and a link in the description below if you'd like to check out some of the stuff I have available. I also have a Patreon available if you'd like to set up to be a patron and help support what I do. If you could like, share, subscribe, and comment on the video, that would certainly help other people find the channel, and I would very much appreciate the support. So here, without further ado, is the story of the 1978½ Suzuki RM250C-2. The 1970s were a great time to be a Suzuki fan. In Europe, they dominated the Grand Prix standings with riders like Roger DeCoster, Joël Robert, and Gaston Rayher at the controls. In America, Pennsylvania's Tony DeStefano piloted the Yellow Machines to 3 straight 250 motocross titles in 1975, 76, and 1977. On the track, they were dominant, and in the showrooms, they had the cachet of a winner. To put it frankly, if you wanted to win in the mid-70s, you could not do much better than a Suzuki RM. For Suzuki, this dominance at the production level did not come easy. Early efforts like the TM400 Cyclone had been notable for all the wrong reasons. Despite their success on the world stage, Suzuki had found it difficult to translate these Grand Prix wins into production excellence. The Cyclones, Champions, and Challengers looked like the machines ridden by the GP heroes, but they ran more like the poorly executed budget facsimiles that they really were. Thankfully for Suzuki fans, however, all that changed in 1975 with the introduction of Suzuki's first all-new RM. Light, fast, and well-suspended, the RM125 was far more serious than any of the lackluster TMs it had replaced. In 76, Suzuki filled out the RM lineup with a pair of all-new machines aimed at dominating the 250 and 500 class standings. Billed as Works-Replicas, the all-new RM250A and RM370A featured laid-down shocks, powerful case-reed two-stroke motors, and sturdy chromoly steel frames. Unlike past Suzuki efforts, these new RMs actually lived up to their Works-Replica names and offered class-leading performance. By 1978, the RM250 was firmly entrenched as one of the best machines in its class, but after 2 years at the front, it was starting to feel a little heat from the competition. All new bikes from Honda, Kawasaki, and a majorly renovated YZ250 were set to steal the thunder from the reigning national championship machine. With this in mind, Suzuki pushed their development program forward and decided to release a mid-season update to their 1978 RM250C. Dubbed the 1978½ RM250C-2, the new model maintained the basic motor and frame of the 78C model, but added all new bodywork and majorly updated suspension. The new bodywork featured revised fenders, an all-new tank, and a shorter seat for improved ergonomics. The new fenders featured a wider profile for increased mud protection, and reinforcement ribs to reduce flex. The new tank incorporated revised styling, and a change in material from aluminum to plastic. On the suspension front, the RM250C2 featured all new components both front and rear. Up front, the new forks maintained the same 9.8 inches of travel, but offered increased internal overlap to reduce binding and flex. New valving also increased rebound control slightly, and new springs stiffened the ride over the C model. Internally, the new forks also increased overall oil capacity by 19 cc's. As on the C model, the new C2 offered no external adjustments for damping, but the ride could be fine-tuned by adding or subtracting air pressure via Schrader valves at the top of each fork. In the rear, all new shocks punched out nearly an inch more travel than the 250C. The C2's decarbon-type dampers feature remote reservoirs, revised damping, and a competitive 9.7 inches of rear-wheel travel. These Kayaba-built units also included increased fluid capacity to reduce fading and 2 adjustable settings for rebound control. This was a pretty trick feature in 1978, and only Yamaha offered anything similar. In order to make these adjustments, you did have to remove the shock and spring and twist the shock body, however. While not particularly convenient, it was nice to have this option available. In addition to the all-new shocks, the rear of the C2 featured Suzuki's first use of an alloy swing arm on their 250 machines. Similar in appearance to the steel unit it replaced, this alloy design offered improved strength and reduced weight. Finishing off the rear of the C2 was a trick full-floating brake design that looked to improve suspension performance by isolating the shock from the torque forces of the rear wheel under braking. In the motor department, the C2 offered a refined version of the basic RM250C package. The bore stroke and overall displacement remained unchanged. Porting, however, was altered to improve flow, and additional finning was added to the motor to keep temps under control. On the intake side, the C2 continued to use the same semi-case reed power reed induction Suzuki had employed on their RM since 1976. In the bottom end, the crank, transmission, and clutch remained largely unchanged from the 78C model. On the track, the 78½ C2 offered a significantly different experience from its 7-month-old brother. By reshaping the transfer ports, Suzuki's engineers were able to coax an astounding 5 additional horsepower out of the C2 mill. Most of those additional ponies were on the top end, and the new motor pulled far farther and longer than the old version had. Whereas the 78C model had offered a torquey low-to-mid delivery, the new C2 did its best work from the mid-range on up. It still ran well down low, but now it pulled well past the point where the old model had demanded another shift. For pros, these changes were a welcome improvement, but some less skilled pilots preferred the older, mellower engine to the new, more robust power plant. On the suspension and handling end of things, the C2 was improved, but not night and day better than the old model. At 36mm in diameter, the new RM's forks were smaller than the 37 and 38mm units found on the all-new CR and revamped YZ. Their 9.8 inches of travel were also significantly less than the whopping 11.5 inches of movement found in the Honda. In spite of these deficiencies, however, the RM's Kayaba forks worked well. In stock condition, they were a bit stiff for non-pros, but well liked by fast pilots. With a little fine-tuning and a swap to a lighter fork oil, they were proclaimed some of the best forks available in the class in 1978. In the rear, the C2's newly adjustable KYB dampers provided an improved ride over the old C model. Under power, they were plush and well-controlled, without any of the abnormal bottoming or weird behavior common to some of its competitors. The damping was smoother than the C model, and the shocks provided a soft overall feel. In spite of offering 2 adjustments for damping, the performance did not really change drastically when altered. In truth, only the most sensitive of riders could even discern the difference between the 2 settings. On the detailing end of things, the 78½ C2 was an improvement in some areas and a trade-off in others. The new quote-unquote bone saver front number plate featured dual extensions that wrapped around the front crossbar. This feature had been used on factory machines to prevent the front cable from catching on the bars, and was appreciated by everyone who had ever experienced the instant nose wheelie that resulted from this occurrence. Due to the longer forks on the C2, the new bars had to be rear set. This made them feel cramped for some riders, but pretty much everyone appreciated the increased comfort the new rubber-mounted bar clamps provided. The new seat was almost an inch thinner in an effort to offset the increased rear-wheel travel, and harder than the C model. Like the bars, the new lower saddle made the bike feel cramped to some, and no one much seemed to like its feel. Overall reliability was quite good, but some riders did complain of more missed shifts than the old engine. Shock fading was also an issue, with long motors resulting in a lot of hopping and swapping by the end of them. The shocks were also not rebuildable, so if you wanted to improve their performance, the only option was a set of aftermarket alternatives. While the new tank was more dent resistant, its mounting brackets proved very fragile. Decal life was also terrible now due to the gas fumes that quickly made their way through the plastic. At least filling the tank was easier, with a new larger opening and the ability to see the level inside. Overall, the 1978½ RM250C-2 turned out to be just what you would have expected, an improved version of the already very good RM250C. The motor was faster, if slightly harder to ride, the suspension was better, and the bodywork was more durable. It was not the most powerful machine in the class, and it did not offer the most travel, but it did make going fast easy, and for many riders, that's exactly what made these late 70s RMs so appealing. So there you have it. That's a look back at the 1978 Suzuki RM250C-2. This half-year model was certainly very unique. I don't think Suzuki ever did it again, and really I don't know that anybody did it until maybe 2012 when KTM started in their factory edition. So kind of an interesting deal. I guess, as I said in the early part of the video, I think they're feeling a lot of pressure. Honda really came back in 78 with that all-new CR250. Kawasaki took 77 off and came back with an all-new machine in 78. So maybe they felt they couldn't wait till the 79 models came out to stay competitive. I don't think the standard 78 model was a bad machine by any means. Doing some of the research for the article, people liked it. It was not as maybe fast as the Honda and some of the others, but it was certainly competitive. But this bike definitely moved things forward. Longer travel suspension, certainly a great deal more power, 5 horsepower out of more or less the same engine. It's pretty amazing. Obviously, maybe there's something wrong with the base engine, but they really opened up the power quite a bit on this later model. Good time to be riding Suzuki. Suzuki's in the late 70s were great machines. Most people probably say probably the best machines to have at the time. And really from the mid-70s to the early 80s, 83, 84 era, RMs were awesome. And this is kind of like really the golden age of the Suzuki dominance of the sport. So great machine. I don't know how many there are out there now. It's probably a fairly rare machine, I would guess. But in any case, definitely a cool collector's item and probably a neat bike to restore. So if you like this sort of thing, make sure you check out some of the other videos I've done on the channel. I have all kinds of other motocross videos and even ATV stuff available. If you'd like, subscribe, share, and comment, I would very much appreciate that as well. So until we meet again, this is Tony Blazer for the Motocross Vault. Keep the rubber side down. Peace.